We have breaking news. We are going to talk about how this photo, or this photo shoot, led to Tyshawn Jones suing Supreme for $26 million in a lawsuit that was filed yesterday. The center of this lawsuit is based on what Tyshawn argues is a wrongful termination by Supreme, and so I've read the 41-page lawsuit, and I'm going to try to summarize it as best as I can here. So first, let me give you a little bit of background on both parties here. So we got Supreme. Supreme started in 1994 as basically a skate shop in Lower Manhattan, and it kind of became something that like youth counterculture gravitated towards. Skaters, punks, artists, hip-hop heads, etc. In fact, in the words of the lawsuit, it was reputed as a brand capturing both the storied street culture of New York City and a true celebration of skateboarding, both as a sport, a lifestyle, and a look.
Can you really say both and list three things? Not the point, but...
Good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
But as Supreme grew and grew more and more popular on the fashion side of things, they did maintain their presence in skateboarding. They kept a skate team, they filmed videos, they even have bowls in some of their stores.
Oh, really?
And so, yeah, so even as you've seen them climb like the ranks in fashion and different collabs that they're doing and whatnot, they did keep roots in skateboarding for a fairly long time. More recently, they also saw massive financial success. So in October of 2017, they sold a 50% stake to a private equity firm, the Carlyle Group, at a $1 billion valuation. Then, in November of 2020, in an all-cash deal, VF Corporation bought Supreme from the Carlyle Group for $2.1 billion.
Whoa!
Yes. So all the investors were bought out during this. VF owns it outright. And VF, for those of you unfamiliar, owns Vans, is their other big brand. They also own the North Face. They own Timberland, they own Dickies, a couple of other companies like that. Supreme was probably at the end of their portfolio most associated with like a luxury brand. And I think the fit wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
And as you will see, by July of 2024, they agreed to be sold to
EssilorLuxottica.
Exactly.
They own all the sunglasses.
Yeah, they make Ray-Ban and pretty much all of them.
Almost all the sunglasses.
At notably a much lesser valuation.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, in July of 2024, it was agreed to be sold. And that was actually a letter of intent signed between the two entities. The deal didn't actually close until October, but as part of this, there was a mandate by Supreme leadership was under a mandate from this letter of intent to sell it, that they have to actively trim their balance sheet in preparation for this deal.
Yeah.
So in layman's terms, it's not actually sold yet. They're agreeing to sell it, and in order for the deal to not get ripped up later on, Supreme's executive team kind of needs to act in a manner consistent with trimming its balance sheet for this deal to ultimately go through.
So that EssilorLuxottica has less to do.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And also as a part of this deal, when it did finally close in October, VF continued ownership of Supreme through the end of the calendar year 2024.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Supreme. So let's introduce Tyshawn here. Tyshawn was born in 1998 and started skating when he was 10. He started working with Supreme as early as 11, and this is from the lawsuit. So he's a prodigy skater, super good, super fast. He's from New York City. And then like all the major skaters are noticing him. There's a handful of photos of him as a child like this with notable pros. So he's just always kind of been in skateboarding, even from when he started
his
skating.
whole life.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me.
It's like a child actor.
Yeah, exactly. He was initially pro for Toy Machine. Actually, he's wearing a Toy Machine shirt in this. But then he got put on FA and went pro for FA in 2016. He started riding for Adidas in 2014 and went pro for them with a shoe in 2017. So he went pro very, very young.
Yeah, Adidas, he would have been 19.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then he won Thrasher Skater of the Year for the first time in 2018, and then he won
did the kickflip over the train tracks.
That was for his second SOTY win, which he won in 2022.
Wait, so what did he do over the first one?
He didn't skate the train tracks for his first SOTY win.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
So this made him, at the time, only the third skater to have won the award twice, and I'm pretty sure, like, by far the youngest to have won it twice. And then the lawsuit a couple of times calls him the Michael Jordan of skateboarding.
How do you feel about that?
I don't necessarily agree with that. He's certainly like a top 10 skater in terms of fame and celebrity status.
More like a Dwayne Wade.
I don't know. I mean, he's an obvious Hall of Famer,
Yeah.
right? But like, is he? He's
the Michael.
I wouldn't call him the Michael Jordan, but he's like first team all skateboarding for sure.
Yeah, I just feel like Michael Jordan, like, how Michael Jordan, isn't he the guy on the ones, the dunks? No, that's
Air Jordan.
Yeah, Air Jordan.
That is what it's clear this lawsuit is trying to paint him as, like, he is this iconic poster child of a brand similar to the way Michael Jordan is for Air Jordan. That's my belief as to why this lawsuit is using
like,
this language.
I'm the Michael Jordan for Supreme.
Exactly. That is the picture they're trying to paint.
But Supreme never made you their logo.
Well, that's a
Okay.
different thing.
Okay, different. Okay,
Different
keep
thing.
going. This is fun.
I thought so. Okay, so like I said, the crux of this is a wrongful termination suit, basically, right?
Okay.
And so Tyshawn is arguing that his contract with Supreme was unlawfully terminated, and the details of his contract, he signed a number of agreements through the years. The latest one and the current one, when this went down, was signed from August 2023 to December 2025, a 29-month period. Don't know how that happened. And he was to be paid $1 million per year, which were paid in monthly installments of $83,000. Now, separately, everybody in skateboarding is talking about how poor pro skaters are and how the industry is terrible. And you've got like Ryan DeCenzo and Tyson Bowerbank on the 9 Club talking about how pros need to work like 3 or 4 jobs. Tyshawn is getting $1 million a year just from Supreme. Mm-hmm. He has Adidas shoes as well. Not just as a sponsor, like he's got signature shoes.
Yeah.
I have no idea how much he's making.
Well,
but what is surprising to me is the volume of skate footage he puts out pales in comparison to the volume of skate footage that someone like Jamie Foy or Chris Joslin has been putting out a ton of footage. I get that like his value is bigger than that, and we'll talk about like some of his modeling stuff and why that might be. But like, I just thought that was crazy. This guy's making $1 million a year just from Supreme, and everybody else in skateboarding is like, we can't make anything. Like, I've got to deliver pizzas.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of wild.
This adds some interesting flavor.
For sure. Now, this contract also requires him to prominently wear Supreme apparel when he's engaged in skateboarding and going to events and stuff. That makes sense. It also has an exclusivity clause where he's not permitted to endorse, promote, either wear or carry in public other branded apparel than Supreme. Footwear is excluded. That's for Adidas. He also can't do that for other retailers within skateboarding. However, he owns 2 or 3 companies of his own. He owns a board company now and a hardware thing. And this lawsuit did mention that there were like 3 exclusions for companies he owns, so I presume that's what those were. So no big deal, right?
No, that's a huge deal. What do you mean he can't indirectly advertise or endorse or otherwise wear, use, or carry in public? Carry in public any branded apparel other than Supreme? So, like, no JanSport backpack?
Why would you pick JanSport?
Because at first I was going to say Adidas, but then I was like, no, like, let's be real. Like, but he can't, fine.
JanSport? Like, what? That was crazy. Why JanSport?
Because
I wore JanSport backpacks to school. I'm not Tyshawn Jones cool. I don't think he's gonna wear JanSport.
yeah, but is he not allowed to? That's the point. It's not even JanSport.
That's what this would suggest. Okay, great. This is perfect.
That's my point.
Okay. So,
Not even JanSport.
well, on top of that, what we also know about Tyshawn is he's a model.
yeah, so how can you be?
He's actively a model.
Yeah, because you are promoting and endorsing.
Yeah, he's doing different photo shoots for all kinds of different brands.
This was
like,
a bad deal. Whoever cut this on Tyshawn's side.
well, so historically, the lawsuit claims that Tyshawn has been upfront about these different photo shoots with Supreme like the whole time, like going back a decade ago. And they had really no issue with it as long as it's not another skateboarding brand or team. And the lawsuit notes that these issues were never addressed by Supreme over multiple contract renewals. And the lawsuit kind of paints this history of Tyshawn doing all this modeling work that's technically not allowed by his contract, but there's an established history of him doing it and Supreme basically not caring. Right?
Yeah. So then there's no reason that he would feel like he would need to change the language in the contract if he has been upfront and it hasn't been an
The
issue.
contract just keeps getting renewed, and I'm sure some of the language changes.
Yeah.
But like, it just keeps getting renewed.
Yeah.
Everyone's cool
Since
with
he was
it.
11.
Yeah, everyone's cool with it.
Interesting.
And if you think about it from Supreme's perspective, like if he is all in on Supreme, both feet in on Supreme, but he's also doing shoots for Gucci or Louis Vuitton or whomever.
That puts Supreme with Gucci, Louis Vuitton.
Absolutely. Like
Yeah.
it's super mutually beneficial.
Yeah. Okay.
So Supreme doesn't say anything
Yeah.
for years. And in fact, the lawsuit claims that their long pattern of active encouragement and support constitutes knowing and waiving their objection to this term in the contract, right? And term shoots here refers to a series of like 4 photo shoots he did during the term of this current contract.
Got it. Okay.
So great, everyone's cool. But I'm pretty sure you see where this is going, right?
They were not that cool anymore.
So in August of 2024, Tyshawn does this Marc Jacobs photo shoot, which was like a social media thing. Then a termination notice is sent to Tyshawn for breaching contract, breaching this exclusivity clause from this one photo shoot, which was disseminated on social media in August of 2024. This note came on September 12th, 2024.
Well, they just found another $1 million in their budget.
Exactly. And in fact, this termination notice also included saying that it was non-curable. So there's a concept in this where you can terminate Tyshawn immediately for certain things, and those things are enumerated in this. And the lawsuit doesn't include his whole athlete agreement, but presumably those are like morality clauses that are in normal athlete agreements. Basically, if he, has a sexual harassment or sexual assault thing pop up, Supreme can be like, yo, we're done. And they don't need to do anything or jump through any hoops. Otherwise, though, if it's not something that's enumerated there, the way the process is supposed to have worked based on this contract is they can give him a notice of violation, and then he basically has 30 days to provide a cure.
Yeah, remedy,
and then, or remedy, and then they figure it out from there, right? In this case, they did not do that. They just terminated him outright and immediately and said it was a non-curable breach, meaning the damage to Supreme's brand by Tyshawn participating in this Marc Jacobs shoot is totally non-curable and material to putting Supreme in a negative position.
Yeah. I mean, without reading the whole contract, what can I say? But just like, the contract. If you're going by the letter of the law, like, he has a lot to prove.
Tyshawn.
He's breaking the contract over and over with no repercussion.
Yeah, but that's what yes. By the letter of it, you're sure he's breaking it. And that's what the lawsuit, that's what like the first half of the lawsuit reads, is trying to establish, and I summarized it. But it is establishing like a really long pattern of behavior
Totally.
of he doing all this modeling work and Supreme being like, yeah, that's great.
Totally. I'm just like, from my perspective,
Yeah.
I'm like, this is a huge bummer. Someone dropped the ball. Okay, continue. Sorry, it's just like, if you're gonna go, like, your company going into an M&A, you look at these things.
Yeah, and well, somebody from Tyshawn's team at some point in time probably should have been like, hey, we need to remove this exclusivity clause that we are constantly breaking.
Yeah.
That's probably what should have happened.
Yes.
I also see how they got into this spot.
Totally. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So, now this lawsuit, though, is also suggesting that this isn't just a random time at which Supreme has decided to enact this exclusivity clause. It is related to them being sold.
Yeah.
In fact, they're arguing it's a byproduct of VF needing to shed debt, and this was a really easy way for them to free up $83,000 a month.
Yeah.
And so that is what the lawsuit is suggesting that this termination is really the result of.
Oh, Ratzola.
And yeah, so that's where this $1.25 million lawsuit comes from. He has got 15 months left on his contract.
Yeah.
That's $1.25 million. But the lawsuit is actually for $26.25 million.
I was like, oh, this is a no-brainer. You pay him out, or you split the difference.
Yep.
It's actually a head scratcher.
So the other $25 million comes from basically the lost opportunity and damage to Tyshawn's reputation as a celebrity and a professional who makes all his money from brand relationships. And the argument here is that he has been sullied by their false claims. And so they do talk a lot about how Supreme has been going around, apparently, and making statements suggesting we had to let Tyshawn go, or we don't do business with Tyshawn anymore, or we kicked Tyshawn off. And that's largely what the second half of this lawsuit goes into. I'm not going to dig really far into it because, to me, being an outsider, it's much more hearsay than the first half, in that, you know, it's talking about like he saw the photographer that did the Marc Jacobs shoot.
Yeah.
He saw him at Paris Fashion Week in January of this year. And that photographer came up to him and was like, hey, I hear you're not with Supreme anymore because of this.
Interesting.
And so it's just like, it's the rumor mill going around that they're using in this, Tyshawn's team in this lawsuit is using to say he has lost opportunities because he is now associated with having to be let go through no fault of his own, is what they allege, or through the established pattern of the relationship. And that is where the $25 million comes from. I would say...
Steep.
I would say that's steep.
That's steep.
I can believe that there is some degree of damage there.
For sure.
And that is why a jury is going to decide how much money... Or I don't know if a jury will. They'll probably figure out how to settle this. But the lawsuit is requesting a jury trial.
Got it. I mean...
And that's what this lawsuit is about.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's why I didn't include much about that part of the lawsuit, is because the way it reads, like, I'm sure that they have evidence for a lot of the claims that they're making in the lawsuit throughout that section. But me just regurgitating what they're alleging different people says, just kind of, there's not much to talk about. It's just rumors and gossip that we're not really privy to. So that's the Tyshawn situation, and I am sure things will move quickly.
I look forward to staying updated on this.
Yeah, great.
This is some good gossip.
Great. I love it.
Also, like, am I on Tyshawn's side or Supreme's?
Oh, my gut initially said, I think usually in the skater versus big business, as much as you want to cheer for the skater, typically the big business is like legally and contractually in the right. whether that's morally or ethically the same as being
by
right.
the letter of the agreement they signed.
Yeah, usually the corporation is correct. In this case, I'm totally with Tyshawn. At least for the first part. Like, you shouldn't, he was absolutely terminated. I would have to believe that he was terminated unjustly.
That's where I feel like, yes, sentimentally and respectfully, totally unjust. By the letter of the contract, like, I see how when the company's been sold for its third time, that goes out the window. Sentiment and respect. And you're just like, here's $1 million.
Yeah, but if you, I mean, that's what I'm curious for from the legal mechanism, is if you establish a years-long pattern of ignoring this clause, while you know you're ignoring this, you are actively, like, Supreme knows he's doing these photo shoots.
No, I know. I'm just saying, I understand that, like, or what I'm saying is the business landscape, the relationship landscape takes a different route when you are being
it's sold
for a haircut.
Yeah.
Like, that's the perspective I'm coming from, is like, if you are being bought, you go in and you look at all of your active contracts.
Yeah, it's the perfect time to cut contracts. Somebody looking at a spreadsheet just starts cutting contracts and finding any reason they can to cut contracts.
Well, and,
like, that's how it works.
Yes, and on the flip side, I'm saying they've been sold before, but, like, if you're doing something like this, part of the due diligence is reviewing the termination clauses in all of these contracts so that you know how and when you can do it.
And you'd see it right away, and it's clear as day.
Yeah, and so then it's like, okay, so, like, we can do this, and then you eventually have to make cuts. And so at a certain point, it's like, sorry, Tyshawn, we're trying to still exist.
Yeah, well, then you end up on every news website.
Yeah.
And are probably going to have to pay more than the $1.25 million you originally needed to over the course of a year and a half.
Yeah, and Supreme's brand value might take a huge hit.
Yep, interesting.
Yeah, so this was, like, from where I'm sitting as, like, the person that sometimes reads contracts, like, bad business decision. It was a decision made under pressure without thinking at all through the repercussions.
Well, I am glad to finally provide you some hot goss from skateboarding that you really enjoyed. I think you enjoyed.
That was good.
Good. All right.
I'm going to have to go look at Tyshawn's campaigns.
Yeah, we'll put her there.
I had a bad angle. Ow! Got my knuckles.